My family laughed in my face when I said I wanted to be a mechanic. I still remember the day my father chased me out of the house, yelling that I'd never amount to anything. But here's the twist. Years later, those same people came crawling back, begging me for help after their business collapsed and the bank evicted them. My name is Alicia Walker, and this is the story of how the daughter they mocked for being just a grease monkey ended up owning the biggest auto empire in the country, while they lost everything. Even as they laughed, I remembered the smell of oil in my grandfather's garage, the way he'd kneel beside me, handing me tools, and wink with that mischievous smile. Listen close, Alicia. A car always tells you what it needs if you respect it enough, he'd say. Those afternoons weren't just about engines. They were about patience, focus, and believing in yourself when nobody else would. That memory became my shield. I guess the best place to start is with grease on my hands. That's how I remember myself as a kid, kneeling on a cold garage floor, sleeves rolled up, eyes wide as I watched my grandfather tinker under the hood of his old Chevy. He was the only one in my family who didn't see engines as dirty work. To him, machines had a heartbeat. Those afternoons with him lit something inside me. Cars became my language, my escape, my safe place. But after he passed, that safe place felt like a crime in my own house. My parents, especially my father, wanted nothing to do with my tomboy obsession. He was a man of appearances, always obsessed with how the family looked in the community. To him, worth was measured in degrees, titles, and polished shoes. He'd brag about my older brother studying business management or my cousin heading to law school, then turn and sneer at me like I was a stain on the family name. I'll never forget one Thanksgiving dinner. Relatives gathered, laughter bouncing off the walls, and in the middle of it all, my father raised his glass and said, "To my son, the future businessman of the family." Everyone clapped. Then someone asked, "And Alicia, what's she up to these days?" My father's jaw tightened. He didn't even look at me. "She plays with cars, still. She refuses to do anything worthwhile. I suppose every family has one disappointment." I felt my chest tighten, my palms sweat. I wanted to shout, to defend myself, to tell them how wrong they were, but I stayed frozen, letting their words hit me like a storm. The room went silent, then filled with awkward chuckles. I sat there with my face burning, gripping my fork so hard my knuckles turned white. The thing is, I wasn't failing. I was learning. By 16, I could tear apart an engine and put it back together blindfolded. I helped neighbors fix their old beaters just to practice. I studied manuals the way other kids studied textbooks, but none of that mattered at home. To them, all they saw was a girl coming home with oil under her nails, her hair tied back, and a stubborn gleam in her eyes. By the time I graduated high school, the pressure became unbearable. My mother begged me to enroll in nursing. My father demanded law school or business. My siblings rolled their eyes every time I mentioned cars. But my answer never changed. I wanted to build something of my own, a garage that was more than just four walls. It would be a name, a brand, a place people could trust. That was the night everything cracked. My father had called a family meeting in the living room. His voice thundered as he laid out my future like I was some project plan. "College applications are due. I've spoken to your uncle. He'll help get you into business school. You will not waste your life crawling under hoods." I remember my hands trembling, but my voice steady. "No, Dad, I'm not doing it. I'm going to be a mechanic." The room froze. My mother gasped, my brother snickered, and my father's face turned red. He stood, pointed at me, and said words that etched themselves into my skin forever. "If you walk this path, you are no daughter of mine. You will never amount to anything. Mechanics are trash, and that's all you'll ever be." I felt my heart clench, but I refused to let him see me cry. A flash of memory hit me. The first time my grandfather let me hold the wrench alone, how proud he'd been. That pride bolstered me, and I whispered, "Then I guess you don't have a daughter anymore." That was it. He grabbed my arm, yanked me toward the door, and shoved me outside like I was some stranger. He tossed my duffel bag after me, already packed. My siblings stood in the hallway smirking, whispering under their breath. And my mother? She just stood there, wringing her hands, too weak to speak up. The porch light clicked off. The door slammed shut, and I was alone. I sat there for hours, staring at the bag that held nothing but a change of clothes, a half-empty wallet, and my small set of tools, the ones my grandfather had left me. The night was cold, the streets quiet, and my heart was heavier than the bag at my side. For a moment, I almost gave in. almost turned back, and begged for forgiveness, promised to follow their rules. But then I remembered the look on my father's face when he said I'd never amount to anything. And I heard my grandfather's voice in my head again, steady and calm. Respect the work, Alicia. Believe in yourself. Never let anyone define your worth. That look and that voice lit a fire I swore I'd never let die. So I stood, slung the bag over my shoulder, and walked into the dark. No plan, no home, no safety net. Just a girl with grease-stained hands, a broken heart, and the stubborn belief that someday, somehow, I'd prove them all wrong. Walking away from home that night, I had no idea what awaited me. The city was bigger than I'd imagined, streets buzzing with lights, cars, and people who didn't know me or care about the battles I had just left behind. I had nothing but my duffel bag, my small set of grandfather's tools, and a stubborn belief that I could carve my own path. I found a tiny basement apartment above an old auto shop. The smell of oil and rust reminded me of my grandfather's garage, and for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. The shop owner, Mr. Hernandez, was an older man with hands like leather and a voice that rumbled like an engine. He saw the determination in my eyes and offered me a job sweeping floors and passing tools to the mechanics. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't enough to pay rent, but it was a start. Every day I watched the mechanics work. I studied their hands, the way they moved, the rhythm they had with engines. After hours, I stayed late, practicing in the dim light, taking apart old carburetors and putting them back together, making mistakes and learning from each one. Some nights I went to bed hungry, but I didn't care. Every failure was a lesson, every small victory a reminder that I was building something they had never believed I could. It wasn't long before word got around that there was a girl at Mr. Hernandez's shop who could fix engines other mechanics wouldn't touch. At first, customers were skeptical. A teenage girl with grease-stained hands? People laughed or rolled their eyes. But once they saw how precise I was, how I could hear a problem in a car before anyone else could, they began coming back. Slowly, the work increased, and I started saving every dollar I earned. One evening, a sleek black luxury car rolled into the shop. The owner, a wealthy businessman named Mr. Collins, was annoyed that his regular mechanic couldn't diagnose a problem. The mechanics avoided it, claiming it was too complicated. I stepped forward. My heart raced, but I remembered my grandfather's words. Respect the work, Alicia. Listen carefully, and it will tell you what it needs. I spent the next hour under that hood, hands moving with precision, listening, observing. When I finished, the engine purred like a kitten. Mr. Collins was stunned. He paid me generously, then offered a contract to service his company's fleet of vehicles. That one moment changed everything. From that point on, I worked relentlessly. Every day was a grind. I'd open the shop before sunrise, close after dark, sometimes eating only a granola bar for dinner. I studied manuals, business strategies, even management tips I found at the local library. I was building more than skills. I was building a reputation. Word spread, and soon I wasn't just the girl who could fix engines, I was Alicia Walker, the mechanic who refused to quit. After a few years, I had saved enough to open my own small garage. It was modest, a single bay, peeling paint, and secondhand tools. But it was mine. I named it Walker Auto in honor of my grandfather. Every car that rolled through the doors, every engine I repaired, felt like a step toward proving that fire inside me was worth something. The first few months were brutal. I had a handful of loyal customers, but bills piled up, and I often had to choose between paying rent or buying new parts. I remember nights lying awake, wondering if I had made a mistake. But every time I thought of my father's words, every sneer, every laugh, I felt a surge of determination. I couldn't afford to give up. Not now. Slowly, I expanded. One bay became two became three. I hired apprentices, training them the way my grandfather trained me, patiently, with respect, and with the expectation that excellence was non-negotiable. I also learned the business side, tracking costs, negotiating with suppliers, understanding customer expectations. Every lesson felt hard-earned, but I thrived on it. Tenacity attracted attention. Local newspapers wrote about the girl who could fix any car, even luxury imports. Companies began calling, asking for contracts to maintain their fleets. I negotiated wisely, always mindful of the value of my work. Soon, what started as a single garage became a small chain of shops, each more professional, each more successful than the last. Even as I climbed, the memory of my family lingered. Not the warmth, but the sting of rejection. I often imagined what my father would say if he could see me now. Would he be shocked, ashamed, Or would he try to reclaim some of the credit, pretending he had always believed in me? I pushed those thoughts aside. My focus was building something I could call my own, something no one could take away. It was around this time that I realized I wasn't just building a career, I was building an empire. Each garage I opened was another brick in the foundation of a life that belonged to me alone. I invested wisely, learned to read markets, and gradually, Walker Auto grew from a neighborhood shop to a respected regional brand. And yet, for all my success, I never forgot my grandfather. Every decision, every car, every employee trained under my roof carried a piece of his wisdom. The smell of oil, the hum of engines, the precise click of a wrench, it all reminded me why I started and why I refused to let anyone else define my worth. I was no longer just the girl they mocked. I was Alicia Walker, the mechanic who refused to quit, the entrepreneur who turned scorn into opportunity, the woman who built an empire out of grit, determination, and the love of a man who taught her that machines and people always tell the truth if you listen carefully. The hardest part? Knowing that one day my family would have to see me. Years passed, and Walker Auto had grown beyond anything I could have imagined back in that cold basement apartment. From one tiny garage to a network of locations across the city, I had built not just a business, but a legacy. Employees I had trained like family ran operations smoothly. Loyal customers lined up for my services, and my reputation had become unstoppable. Every deal I signed, every engine I fixed reminded me of my grandfather and the fire he had lit in me. But despite the success, I never stopped remembering the laughter, the sneers, the words my father had hurled at me. They haunted me not because I doubted myself, but because they had underestimated me for so long. I knew that one day our paths would cross again, and I was determined to be ready. That day came sooner than I expected. A call from a collection agency confirmed what I already suspected. My family had lost everything. The small grocery store my father had managed went bankrupt, the house was seized by the bank, and debts piled up faster than they could pay. The people who had once scorned me were now desperate. I watched from the window of my flagship garage as my father, mother, and siblings appeared at the front door, shivering in the cold, eyes wide with hesitation and shame. They weren't sure if I'd recognize them or if I'd even answer. I stepped outside, walking toward them in my crisp uniform, hands still carrying the tools I loved, but dressed like someone who had won every battle they ever tried to wage against me. The silence was heavy. My father opened his mouth, then closed it again. My mother's hands trembled, and my siblings shifted uncomfortably. I could see the mixture of fear and regret in their eyes, the same expression people make when they realize they've been defeated by someone they thought they could control. I took a deep breath and let my voice carry. "So, you're here because you need help," I said calmly, almost like I was reading a line in a play. "Funny, isn't it? The daughter you said would never amount to anything is the only person who can help you now." My father's lips quivered, but no words came. My mother's eyes welled up, and I could see my siblings avoiding my gaze. I didn't rush. I let the moment stretch. Every second reminded me of the dinners, the snickers, the moments they tried to break me. Finally, my father spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Alicia, please. We don't know where else to turn." I paused, considering him carefully. Memories of rejection, ridicule, and every insult flashed in my mind. And then I remembered my grandfather and how he would have told me to hold my ground, to respect the work, and to let my results speak louder than words. "I can help," I said slowly. "But first, understand this. I'm not the same girl you tried to push aside. I'm in charge now. I make the decisions. And every choice I make affects not just you, but everyone in my company. Do you understand?" They nodded quickly, swallowing their pride like it had been stripped away. "Yes, we understand," my mother whispered. I smiled, calm, controlled, and completely in command. "Good. Then we'll start with the debts. I'll arrange for temporary housing, and I'll make sure your creditors are handled. But one thing, this isn't charity. This is business. You follow my rules, or you walk. Understood?" They swallowed again. Yes. Over the next few weeks, I watched them adjust to my terms. My father, humbled, had to take orders for the first time in his life. My mother learned to rely on systems and schedules. And my siblings, well, they realized that talent, grit, and vision mattered more than connections or smug arrogance. I made them work alongside me in the garages, observing how hard I and my teams worked. Every day, I could see them learning, adapting, and slowly gaining respect. not for my forgiveness, but for what I had built. The sweetest part wasn't just that they were humbled, it was watching their pride dissolve in the face of the very person they had dismissed, the girl they mocked, the granddaughter they ignored. They had thought I would fail, that I would crumble without their guidance. Instead, I had thrived, alone, with grit, with skill, and with the lessons of a man who had believed in me when no one else did. One evening, after a particularly long day, my father approached me while I was reviewing accounts in the office. Alicia, he began hesitantly. I, I don't know how to say this. We were wrong. I was wrong. You've done what we never imagined. I looked at him, eyes steady. It's not about being right or wrong anymore. It's about respect, Dad. You'll only earn it by working alongside me, not by expecting handouts or recognition. He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. That night, I went home knowing that the roles had reversed completely. I had given them a chance, yes, but on my terms. I was no longer the girl they could dismiss. I was a leader, a force, and someone they would never underestimate again. In the weeks that followed, I watched my empire flourish while my family adapted. They weren't just survivors, they became competent, hardworking contributors under my guidance. But the beauty of it all? They had to recognize the power shift themselves. They had to see that the girl they mocked had become the one in control, the one shaping their lives, the one with the last word. Looking back, I realized it wasn't revenge that tasted sweet. It was justice, earned through perseverance, skill, and unshakable belief in myself. My grandfather's words had been right. Respect the work, listen carefully, and let the results speak for themselves. I had done just that. And as I stood in the center of my flagship garage, engines humming, employees moving efficiently, and my family finally humbled yet thriving by my side, I understood the full circle of it all. I had turned rejection into motivation, mockery into ambition, and hardship into triumph. The daughter they had dismissed had become the woman they would never forget. And that, more than anything, was worth every sleepless night, every ounce of sweat, and every tear shed in the dark. I had not just survived, I had won. My empire wasn't just built of cars and garages, it was built of grit, determination, and the unwavering belief that no one has the power to define you except yourself. And that, finally, was the sweetest victory of all.